Fifth Third Pavilion, a lively venue in the heart of Lexington where millennials can go bar hopping, enjoy live music, shop at the local farmers market, and much more. But do any of them know what this venue was used for 200 years ago? Do you know?
No.
No?
No.
It's Cheapside Park. No. And
No.
okay.
No, I did not. That's surprising.
And are you from Lexington?
I am from Lexington.
Since it became obvious that so many people are uninformed about the history of Fifth Third Pavilion, we decided to interview Jayla Hudson, a Lexington native, to find out what she knows about Lexington's dark past. Okay, so where are you from?
I was born and raised in Lexington.
And were you aware of the slave trade that took place in Lexington?
I was aware that Kentucky was a slave state, yeah.
Did you know that the Fifth Third Bank Pavilion area was once the site where slave auctions were held?
Before, maybe about a year or two ago, I didn't know. One day, me and my dad were driving downtown, and we were in one of our heavy conversations as usual. And we were driving past the pavilion area. I'm pretty sure it was probably a Thursday because for some reason it drew his attention. So I remember he had pointed out this black man that was drinking and partying, and he pointed to him and shook his head. And, I was, like, why, what's wrong? He's out there having a good time. And he basically said, he looks like a fool out there drinking and partying with them. And he said, you need to be aware of your surroundings at all times. And, me being young, I'm looking around like, it looks like he's having fun to me. What does surroundings mean? So he basically just explained to me that he just kind of looked like a fool. He was really unaware and he was ignorant to the fact that just, over 200 years ago, his ancestors were, in shackles from wrist to ankles on a slave auction being sold to the highest white bidder. So it just really stuck with me. It's always something that really shook me because being born and raised here, I never knew that. I never knew that in that area there were actually slave auctions held there, and going downtown to all the different parades and buying kettle corn, gelato, and going to watch performances in that area. I never knew. So there's nothing down there that would ever give me that knowledge. There's no statues or plaques or anything paying homage to the slaves that were sold there. So I never knew in that particular area.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
After our interview with Jayla Hudson, our group wanted to know how prominent Cheapside Park really was in the slave trade. To answer this question, we turned to Dr. Melanie Goen, a history professor here at the University of Kentucky. How prominent was Cheapside Park in the slave trade?
Well, Lexington, very prominent in the slave trade, very large slave market that went on there. Also one in Louisville, but Lexington, because it was in the center of the bluegrass region of Kentucky, that was an area where the slave population was high relative to the rest of the state, so it made sense for there to be a very active, thriving market.
After we found out how prominent the slave trade was here in Lexington, we wondered how Lexingtonians felt about this horrible market being the heart of their city's economy. Dr. Goen explained to us an idea historians like to call the Kentucky paradox and emphasized what it really meant to the people of Kentucky.
What you end up having here in Kentucky also that sets it apart is a much longer and livelier discussion about the future of slavery. And you're right, faith groups, very important. Right from day one, as Kentucky's writing its constitution, there's a group of ministers who are advocating that Kentucky not be born into sin. Don't let it become a slave state. They're outvoted. But that dialogue and the debate and the discussion continues at least until the 1850s. After that, it quiets down a little bit. But up until that point, and a lot of it's slave owners themselves who are talking about a gradual end to slavery. Henry Clay's freeing his slaves in his will after he dies. Kentuckians like the idea of getting rid of slavery. they don't really like the idea of getting rid of their slaves. When it's, as long as it's hypothetical, they like the idea.
On behalf of our group, we want to stress that this documentary was not to shame anyone who didn't know. The purpose of this documentary was to inform those who were unaware. We want our viewers to learn from our documentary. This history is important when we knew it needed to be shared. The history of Lexington's Cheapside slave trade needs to be known, and we hope that what you take away from this documentary, you decide to pass on as well.